This is Identity at the Center. If it has anything to do with IAM, this is the go-to podcast. Now your hosts, Jim McDonald and Jeff Steadman.
Welcome to the Identity at the Center podcast. I'm Jeff, and that's Jim. Hey, Jim.
Hey, Jeff. How are you?
Oh, not so bad. Yourself?
I'm doing pretty good. Okay, so today is November 5th. We're recording. This is going to be dropped on November 13th. In between, I'm going to have surgery on my sinuses. So I've got a deviated septum, which means I'm like a heavy breather and a mouth breather. And
one of the reasons.
It's not fun, man. Yeah, well, no. I mean, this might be the last episode that I get texts from you like, I can hear you breathing. I mean, this might actually even change how I sound. So I may go from my kind of nasally voice. I might sound like Morgan Freeman in a month.
Well, I could certainly make that happen. I can make it also sound worse, maybe like a chipmunk. I guess if people out there are listening and like they listen to this episode, right, kind of pre-surgery, and then the next few after this post-surgery, like, is there a difference in the voice? I don't know. I mean, it'd be interesting to see. Definitely a scientific experiment we can run here on the show, but
we could make a YouTube short out of it.
Could do that. We're starting to put our episodes up on YouTube. So I think we're just before we hit record. So it's Sunday morning, right? You said November 5th, and episode number 170 just went live on the YouTube channel. And then this is going to end up being episode probably 246, I believe. So it's slowly catching up.
This is dedication, man. I think this is our first episode recorded on Sunday. I thought Saturdays were bad. Saturday is dedicated to college football for me. I love college football. And I was actually listening to one of our YouTube, our episodes from, I don't know, it might have been 2 years ago. And you and I were going back and forth, and you're like, I hate college football. I don't watch college football. But you live in the South now. I believe you will be converted.
I don't think so. I'm still not interested, still don't care. I am a NFL person. Talk to me when they're professional. And that's pretty much how I look at it. I think part of this is I don't have like an alma mater to be able to be like, say, oh, okay, like that's my team. Like if I lived in Chicago for a long time, the Bears, are kind of my team. I lived in California, so the Niners are kind of like my team. I haven't changed those two allegiances, having moved to North Carolina now. I'm not a Panthers fan. I'm still a Bears and a Niners fan. But I don't feel that same affinity towards a college team because I don't have that connection.
Now, are you the type of person that I know you haven't moved around that much, but now that you moved somewhere, do you feel like within the next 10 years that you could become a fan of like local teams like the Panthers?
I don't think so, but maybe that's just me getting old and stuck in my ways. I mean, it's not that I won't cheer for them or something if I don't have like an alternative to cheer for, right? If the Bears are playing the Panthers, I'm cheering for the Bears. If the Niners are playing for the Panthers, I'm cheering for the Niners. If the Bears play the Niners, I'm usually a little bit conflicted, but that's doesn't happen very often, so I don't have to worry about that. But I just don't see myself. I don't know. For whatever reason, college just doesn't do it for me. It never has, and I don't think it ever will, but who knows?
Well, I did my undergrad in a school that is the Division II school that most folks had never heard of. I did my graduate degree at Rutgers. When I went there, they literally had a season with 0 wins. Now they're pretty good. They played Ohio State yesterday, and they were respectable, but they're still not like in the national conversation. But I live in Georgia. We've got the best team in the country, and it's exciting.
I have heard of all those teams.
Yes, that's pretty good. So, I mean, between YouTube and AI, there's now a new Beatles song.
Yeah. Have you heard it?
What's it called here? I haven't heard it. I heard about it, but I haven't heard it.
Yeah. So if you're a Beatles fan, I think it's interesting to check out on Apple Music. They have the song, obviously, but they also have like a 10-minute short film that you can watch, kind of see how they kind of put it together. So it's pretty interesting. I think the AI is a little bit of a misnomer because it's really more machine learning, which technically, yes, AI. But I think the perception is that it's like, oh, somebody cloned, John Lennon's voice or something like that. That's not what happens. I don't know if I want to spoil it. Do you want me to spoil it for you, or do you want me to tell you what they actually did?
I wouldn't mind if you spoiled it for me, but I don't want you to spoil it for all of our other fans. So maybe we should even put a link in the show notes
Spoiler.
Jeff, I'm going to leave it to you. You decide.
So, okay, well, I feel like I need to explain it just a little bit to kind of help understand. So if you're interested in seeing how it was done, go watch the Apple Music. Take 10 minutes, watch that, and then come back here and listen to this. And in, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes, we'll probably be done with this part. But, okay, that's the warning. So the way that they did this was they had a tape recording of John Lennon and a song that he had, like a demo tape, basically from 1980 or 81 or something like that, towards the end of his life. And they had tried to work on creating new songs based on this in the past. And so if you remember, like in the mid 90s, they released the anthology album that had like a bunch of their old stuff. And there was like a new song on there. And that was based off of some of the stuff that John Lennon had already kind of recorded and was put there, but was never released. What they struggled with at the time was this other song that they ended up calling Here and Now, where it was John Lennon playing over a piano and sort of, again, very rough. Obviously, it's a demo tape. It's literally recorded on tape, tape itself, right? Putting it together. And they could never quite figure out how to separate the channels to be able to have just John Lennon's voice as a stem and the piano as a stem, because then that way they could kind of separate it and kind of figure out how to make it work. Fast forward to a year ago, 2022, and the rise of AI and kind of the computational things we're able to do now. And they actually enlisted Peter Jackson of Lord of the Rings fame and The Hobbit and stuff like that, and all the techno-widgetry that they have put in place to figure out a way to separate John Lennon's voice from that track that also contained the piano that was giving them so much trouble before. And so they're able to take that and basically extract his voice just out. And now they've put together this song, and McCartney and Ringo put together kind of their parts of it. They used some stuff that George Harrison had done in the past and pulled together this thing. And now there's this song, and it's amazing to think about kind of like that kind of thing, because, being able to separate out voice from something else, something I do all the time. And I take advantage of definitely AI in this podcast, right? Trying to make sure our voices sound, as reasonably polished as I can, background noises, things like that. But if you think about where they were and now, like this technology is out there for, normal people to be able to use, is pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. That's a beauty, like a really positive view on AI, because I think sometimes you can get dragged down of like AI is going to end humanity as we know it. AI is going to put us all out of jobs. It might.
Yeah.
It might, but I don't think it will.
It's like anything else. I feel like it's a tool. It can be used for good, bad, and everything in between. And hopefully we have enough guide rails and things like that around it to try and steer it in the direction that it should be going. But it was interesting. And I think it's just, again, the kind of misnomer of like, it wasn't like somebody cloned John Lennon's voice to do this. It was literally just the extraction of his voice off of a track that had a lot of background noise to it. In this case, a piano that was making it very difficult for them to do that in the past. But it was pretty neat. I think it's, if you're a fan of that sort of things, or the Beatles, check it out on Apple Music. Like I said, they have like that 10 or 12 minute sort of like making of video, and then the actual song itself. So I don't know if it's necessarily what I would call a banger, but it's a new Beatles song. I know people kind of go crazy for that kind of stuff sometimes.
How many people did you have come to your house for Halloween?
I don't know, because I wasn't home. I know I live kind of up on the side of a mountain, and then we had kids come through as kind of like a pack. There's probably like maybe 30 homes, I think, up here. So I'm not sure how many kids came through, but I want to say somewhere around 20, 25, maybe at most.
That's not bad. That surprised me, considering you have like the long driveway and everything. It's a lot of work.
That's probably why. Nobody wants to watch.
If I come to your house, I'm expecting a full-size candy bar. Just saying.
We did have Snickers and Twix, I saw, in one of the buckets. So I did notice that last night. But yeah, I wasn't home because I was on my way to Durham for work, which was kind of cool. So I thought this week was kind of like a good showing of like the differences of like what an identity consultant can be, especially like some of like our roles and things like that. Like just kind of going back, right? So this is the week of Halloween, and I was home on Monday for the first time in like weeks to be able to like work from home like fully. And then of course, because I was home, that meant like meetings basically from like 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. nonstop.
Yeah.
And then Tuesday I had meetings in the morning, and then needed to drive out to Durham to run a IAM workshop on Wednesday, which was a lot of fun. Great group of people. It's interesting to me that we're still finding people out there, and you and I are so close to this, right? And everybody probably listening to this is like, oh, okay. Of course, identity and access management, get it, blah, blah, blah. But there are still lots of people out there that really don't know the space. So being able to conduct like basically an all-day workshop and kind of educate on here's what IAM is, here's what it means to run a program, here's what IGA is, like educating, like just stuff like that was a lot of fun. My voice was shot, man, by the end of the day on Wednesday. I think I talked straight for another 12 hours. But then had lunch on Thursday with our friend Arturo. We talked identity over chicken and waffles. For those interested, we went to Dame's Chicken and Waffles, and I give it a 7, I think, or 8. The chicken was good. The waffle was a little bit small, and it wasn't a Belgian waffle. It was like a cinnamon vanilla waffle. It was okay. Definitely, I would say it's third place on my tiering of chicken and waffles.
Was the chicken like bone in, or
Yes.
was it a boneless?
Well, you could choose. This is kind of the cool thing. Is you choose your chicken. So you could do like a cutlet. You could do wings. You kind of whatever pieces you want. Then you choose the type of waffle you want. Normal in quotation marks, which was their cinnamon thing, and then like sweet potato, gross, or like these other flavors of waffles that should not be allowed. And then you pick like a schmear, which is kind of like Nutella or like a maple butter or like a whole bunch of different things. And then you could choose a sauce to dip your chicken in. So they had like a bunch of stuff.
That sounds
like that.
amazing.
And of course, then, syrup, for the waffle and stuff like that. So yeah, it was good. Like I said, the chicken was good. The waffle was okay. Not the worst I've had, but definitely not the best. I'm a Belgian waffle guy. So I feel like to have the best chicken and waffles, you need Belgian waffle, bonus points if you've got bacon in the batter, and then really good fried chicken. And it was fun. So we talked identity, chicken and waffles, and I drove home. Had a whole bunch of days meetings Friday. And then now I'm turning around the Sunday. I got to fly out tonight and spend all week on the road again, pretty much doing stuff.
Yeah. Do you think that most people think, oh, Jeff's got this glamorous life. He's traveling all the time. It's so interesting.
I think so. I think if you don't travel, it may seem like that sometimes, but for every, I don't know, great travel experience, we've kind of talked about that, like there's probably a dozen bad ones. Like, I had to leave San Diego when we were at the Authenticate conference, like very early Wednesday morning, like 4:30 in the morning to make it out to Indianapolis for another work item. And we sat on the tarmac in San Diego for 4.5 hours, not going anywhere because of fog and a whole bunch of other things. And so that was not great. But I like to travel, so it doesn't necessarily, bother me, but it could certainly wear on you. This will be like my 12th week in a row going somewhere on the road for something, and it'll be interesting.
I don't really like to travel. I mean, I like to do a little bit of travel or some travel. So I guess this is the hopeful message for folks who are considering getting into consulting but are afraid that they'll be on the road every week. I think that's the way it used to be at a lot of consulting firms, and probably is still at some consulting firms. But most of the people who are on the delivery side that I work with, and including myself, are not traveling every week. I traveled for the conferences. I did one client travel. Actually, the client travel was super fun because the part I like about travel is getting in a room with people, whiteboarding. It's just so exciting to actually sit there and kind of like think through a problem and try to solve a problem and get as far as you can with the whiteboard. I love that stuff. And especially when you are kind of in our role, which is, you're using your experience. It's interesting as you were talking about like people not kind of knowing the IM and IGA space and stuff like that. It kind of made me think of like, well, you and I, we use CRM all the time. We're well familiar with CRM, but would you be able to go up and explain it to people? Like, no. But this IAM space, we really know. So we can actually sketch things on the whiteboard, and people ask questions like, oh, so how would this talk to this? And then you know from your experience. So it's a lot of fun. And, I'm working still, like my focus is still IAM advisory or digital. I like to say digital identity advisory because it can span the whole space. Still working a lot there's still a lot of organizations that are kind of working through the blocking and tackling, like what is IGA? Should I have IGA? I mean, most places kind of start with single sign-on, but now they're getting into, how do I do a better job of administering and governing access? How do I deal with privileged access management? And so I'm working with a client right now where, we went on site, did the workshops. Now we're going back and kind of building out the deliverables. And to me, that's fun as well. Like, thinking about everything you heard, putting together an assessment, making recommendations based on that assessment, and turning it into a consumable story that has a logical beginning and a logical, ending and everything in between. So, that is, I think, the contrast is, I know you're out kind of like meeting with prospective clients or actual clients, and I'm more at home being able to do it. And, I will say I had to do a lot more travel pre-pandemic too, because a lot more clients were 100% in the office and wanted to have you on site, and were less used to using video conferencing to accomplish really it's hard to accomplish what you talked about, 1 day workshop and get everybody to pay attention to a Teams meeting or a WebEx all day. But everybody, I think, is used to doing it for an hour to 2 hours at a time and staying focused and getting things done. So I think that's been a huge way to cut down on it. And then the other thing was, we were kind of like working through like coming up with a big picture strategy for, a potential project in the future, which would be converting from a legacy access management solution or web access management to a modern system. It's like, it's right in my wheelhouse. So it's not like I don't have to think. I definitely have to think about it, but it's, that's one of the things that I think, I'm sure everybody who's like early in their career wants to go faster. They want to move up the chain faster and like, hey, I wanted to do the same thing. But there's a certain amount of experience that when you build it up, it's like you have these knowings and you have like, I've done that. I've actually done that. So you can talk about it and like you can't skip that step.
Yeah, that experience I think is so important, but being able to communicate all that stuff. But I just thought it was really interesting because just before I hit record, we're like, all right, we had like really different weeks. It's like, okay, that's just, I guess, part of its role, I think, kind of we each play within, what we do for our real job. But it's interesting. I was like kind of peeling back on that, and it'll be another interesting week on the road again. And hopefully your thing goes well, right? And voices sound, it'll be interesting. I'm curious. I'm really interested to see how this turns out in the voice, because I know our voices so well from doing all the audio editing, over 246 episodes. And it'll be interesting to see like how it changes, if at all. Maybe it doesn't.
Well, yeah, I'm going to have to rely on people like you to tell me, because I listen to the podcast. I'm like, I don't sound like that.
Everybody hates their own voice.
Yeah. Well, I think mine's changed over time too. I think like I can tell you right now, I'm not breathing through my nose. I can't breathe through my nose while I'm talking.
Yeah, I can kind of tell. Congested, basically. Well, hopefully this works out for you, brother. I'm curious. I want to see from a scientific standpoint, but also from a health standpoint. Hopefully this clears things up for you. We had a bunch of questions come in that we've like been saving, sort of like a mailbag. We'll see how many we can get to today, but a very worldwide mailbag as well. Like a lot of international folks reached out, which is very cool.
What is our listenership as far as the globe is concerned? I mean, it's not all U.S. I think at one point we said it was like 60%.
Yeah, it's like around 40% is international. Sometimes it kind of goes up and down, kind of depending on the month or whatever it may be. But let's call it like 40% is international, which is pretty cool, for a couple of guys here who can barely speak English as it is, that are other people around the world who are able to listen in. But so it's cool when we get any sort of feedback, right, from anybody who's listening out there. But when they send questions in, it kind of helps Jim and I out, like, okay, what should we talk about? Like we have an idea of what's interesting for us, but it's helpful when people, send stuff to us. And usually they send it in via LinkedIn or things like that. Every once in a while, they'll hit our website, idacpodcast.com, and fill out sort of the contact form and kind of things like that. But why don't I just jump into this? I'll ask the question and let's see if we can stump you on anything. And then if I have any color to add, I'll do that.
All right. That sounds fun.
Okay. So the first question comes from Chloe in Melbourne, Australia. How should companies approach the integration of IAM with legacy systems that were not originally designed with modern IAM solutions in mind? I feel like we get this question a lot.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, what I have to do is not try and look at it as a trick question, but kind of take it at face value. I think most legacy systems or even modern systems are not designed with hey, you're going to hook this into an IAM system. They almost all have IAM capabilities built within the application, but especially legacy systems do, because there were not centralized IDPs when they're first started up, and they don't have great integration capabilities for systems. But, kind of the OG legacy system that I think of are like mainframes and mid-range computers and applications, and they still exist in a lot of organizations. They don't interface well with an access management system. They don't typically work super well with an IGA system. Really what you're looking at is kind of, for them, it's like a middleware situation where if you have like a top secret type of application, if you can, from an IGA perspective, kind of extract and populate user accounts and, do the best that you can in terms of like password management, that's a major benefit. Obviously, if you're only accessing that application through some kind of front-end process or maybe like a web front-end that you built to that application, that's great. But usually that's not the only way that people end up accessing those mainframes. And of course, you have like web-based technologies and fat clients, and a lot of those things are going away. I think one of the key things is like if you are rolling out an IAM technology, modernizing your IAM platform, and you think about those applications, you have to really ask yourself, is this application going to be around more than 2-3 years? If it is, then it's worth the effort to integrate it, especially if it's a high-risk application. I think if it doesn't qualify as that, or you're not sure, it's like, do you really want to spend the money? Because those can be very difficult to integrate with. Yeah. That's my initial thought.
The part you talked about is what I kind of started with was, is it worth it? Are we going to get value out of this? Are there other things that we need to be working on that are either quicker, faster, whatever, it would be easier? If I wouldn't start with stuff that doesn't lend itself well to integration, because I think the next question is, okay, so we've determined that it's worth it. Now we have to decide, well, what do we mean by integration? Are we just talking authentication? Are we talking authorization? Do we need to do identity governance, privileged access, audit logging, behavior analytics, right? Things like that. So I think you kind of figure out okay, what's worth it to do is a big part of answering that question. And sometimes the answer is no, it's not worth it. Let's focus on the 80% that we can do. And some things will just remain the way they are until the mainframe dies again for the fourth time in the last 2 decades, at least that I've been hearing about it. So it's kind of like the password. Everybody keeps expecting mainframes to go away, but they're still around and still actively being used. But I think those are the two things. Everything you said was right on, definitely for sure. And is it worth it? And then what do you mean by integrate? Define what that integration looks like. Because I think you can also say, okay, well, for this application, maybe it's just authentication. We've got to put an MFA in front of it and that's it. We're good. It's not worth doing the rest. So I think calculating that, that benefit and whether it's worth the time or the effort makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's move to the next one. This one is from Priya in Bangalore, India. What are the emerging trends in IAM that you believe will shape the way we handle identity verification and access control in the next 5 years?
Well, I think, identity verification to me brings up the whole idea around verifiable credentials, which is something like a passport or a driver's license or some other, government issued identifier or identification card that can be scanned, usually both sides, where they have some kind of encrypted version of your face and then a picture of you, and can then use your camera to identify you. So I think that's, we see it. Very minor use cases. I think the commoditization of that capability is a very real possibility in the next 5 years. So, I think that's what we start to see, that, ubiquity it's not just about like being on the bleeding edge and spotting something that, is way far out there and saying, okay, that's the trend. To me, it's like, okay, what is now building this head of steam and ubiquity? Because ubiquity is so important. It's like with passkeys, it's like it's starting to have ubiquity when Google uses it and things like that. And people get used to it. Now other companies can follow. And then everybody's doing it. Like there's no passwords anymore, potentially. So I think from an identity verification standpoint, you're starting to see it. It's running into some privacy concerns, but I think that's the wave that within 5 years we start saying, okay, that's normal.
Yeah, I feel like this is less of a technology problem at this point and more of a people and process. Because what's going to drive verified credential will be really government, I think, to some degree. Because I want mobile driver's license, so I have one less thing that I have to carry around with me, right? It's in my wallet. I mean, it's in my wallet today, but I want it on my phone, so I have less of those things. But I can only go as fast as my government will let me, right? And I can only speak from the U.S. perspective. Is I don't know how quickly all states in the U.S. will catch on with this and sort of get there. I hope it's within 5 years, and I know there's certainly a few states that have already kind of gone down this road. I think Georgia's one of them, right? Isn't there a mobile driver's license in Georgia? And you're in Georgia.
Yes, Georgia's one of the few.
Yeah. So I think that's one thing to think about, is how quickly will it actually move based on people, governments, organizations, and citizens, and things like that. Because I don't think this is a technology problem anymore. I think there are enough solutions out there and enough sources of truth to actually validate a credential that's where my head is at right now. Change is hard. I mean, I think you've got great technology options out there, but now we're talking about changing the way people do business, people interact with government. You rightfully so need to have a lot of caution, privacy concerns, things like that. Certainly will rear their ugly heads as we're going through this process, and make sure that things are covered and designed to be secure. And that's kind of where I'm thinking about right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it from a U.S. perspective, there's kind of like distrust of the government built right into the U.S. Constitution, where you have the right not to be searched
in some situations.
You're suspected of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like, could you imagine being pulled over and then the police person asking you to unlock your phone and hand it to them? Would you want to do that? I wouldn't want to do that. Yeah. And I don't think I have a lot to hide from they're going to find something and arrest me for it, but it's just, it's not appropriate. I don't think it's fair, and I don't think that is the way it should work. So that's just one example.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to the next one. This one is from, and I hope I pronounce this correctly, Takumi in Tokyo, Japan. What role do you see artificial intelligence playing in the future of IAM, and how can we ensure these systems are transparent and fair? Wow, that's a loaded question. you go first.
I'll go first, but I'm gonna pick on the first part of the question, which is like the role that I see. And I think if you look far enough out, it's artificial intelligence can run IAM systems for organizations. So a lot more can be. Right now, we're relying on humans to run the software. I think that AI could become the runner of the software, because I don't think there's a whole lot that can't be automated. And I also feel like there's...
When you say run,
I'm trying to remember.
What do you mean? Like going in and configuring workflows, resolving errors and configurations? Like, what do you mean?
So I always like to try to take the 80-20 rule. And I don't think that everything's going to be automated, but I feel like just like SOC is being outsourced by companies to companies that run SOCs for many other organizations, I think IAM will kind of come the same way, where it'll be run by outsourced by an organization to some third party, but that software will do most of the running of the software, providing support through a automated fashion, all that. Plus, I think the other thing, there's shortcomings in identity management now. So I can see a big functional up ramp where we say, okay, IGA is not only knowing who has access to what, but also what are they doing with that access. In order to do that, there's a lot of big data that needs to be pushed into some kind of store and analyzed. And those are things that people can't do. So those are like the two major areas that I see. How do we make sure that it's transparent and fair? I think that really comes down to artificial intelligence is just computer code, right? I mean, it's lines of programming, and it's going to have hard-coded decisions. So if those decisions are not transparent and fair, then the IAM system or the AI system will not be transparent and fair. So there's got to be some kind of rules of conduct. Here's one of my concerns is that, like, I feel like if AI goes so fast that we don't get these rules of the road in place, we're going to say, okay, we rely on AI to make certain decisions for us, but we don't know how it's going to make those decisions. So it's already happening to some extent where we say identity threat protection is going to spot certain types of behaviors and then block access. And so right now, for the most part, where I've seen it, it's kind of a black box. It's not like, oh, you want to allow headless browsers or don't allow headless browsers, right? And that's probably clearly we don't want to allow them. So maybe black box is all we need for the moment. But I kind of feel like if we say, well, we want to block people from North Korea, or we don't want to block people from North Korea, like if that's black box and everybody needs to block people from North Korea, well, doesn't that go right to transparent and fairness? Like maybe people in North Korea should be able to, enjoy the internet. Well, obviously, there's other issues at play.
I don't think they weigh into that decision at all. It's people.
I don't think so either. But I was trying to come up with some kind of example. What if it was like China or some other country that, is like, oh, that's a state-sponsored terrorist country, and we as a corporation, we're going to block those people. And now you as an organization who buys their AI software, you're blocking all those people. Is that transparent and fair?
I don't have an answer. I don't know if we block people or more organizations, I guess, but it's clear AI is going to have an impact on IAM, right? We keep talking about it on this show. You hear it at like every conference and every webinar that you go to has some sort of AI component at this point. I'm bullish on it. I think it will be helpful. I think, again, things like large language models have really changed my perception of where this kind of take things in the future. The transparency and fairness around it, I believe, is, you want to have systems that are well designed, they're secure, and they're accessible for people. When we start introducing a black box, as you start, call it, at least for the AI perspective, there does need to be a way to look at how the decisions are being made, even programmatically. And I think this is an area that I'm starting to see more thought go into, is attacks on large language models themselves. So what happens if you poison an organization's AI to give wrong or misleading information? That could be another way that I think people are going to have to start thinking about. It's like, how do we make sure we keep our AI secure, and that how do you validate that the decision making that it's making is based off of accuracy on facts versus maybe something that somebody put in there, right? Maybe it's, somebody gets in and says, hey, just move this decimal point over a little bit and take fractions of a penny, right? That kind of scenario, right? I think it's like, okay, how do we make sure that stuff is there? And I think we definitely have seen, I think the industry is starting to come together on this. I think the White House in the US just put out a directive on this. You certainly see Microsoft and Meta and OpenAI and like others that are in this AI space starting to kind of figure out how are we going to tackle this. I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see how it comes out as they move things along.
I think there's two things I just want to throw in there based on what you said. First off, I don't know how we're going to solve this rules of the road thing. Like, we still haven't solved privacy policies. You go to a website and it's like, oh, by clicking accept, you agree to our privacy policy. Click here to read it. If you click here to read it, it's like 8,000 pages long and you don't read it anyway. It's like, if you want to use the website, you just accept. That is not the spirit of what's meant to happen. And if we run into that same kind of thing, then, it's going to be every person for themselves. The other thing I think with AI and IAM is mostly when I hear vendors talk about, oh yeah, we've got AI. And then when they explain what it does, I'm like, that's not revolutionary. It's not revolutionary. So does that mean it's not going to be revolutionary? No, I do think it will be at some point. But I also wonder if it's just going to be the major tech companies are the only ones who can provide the AI because they're the only ones who can actually create the AI.
Yeah, it takes a lot of resources to develop this thing. So do we end up in the cyberpunk megacorp world where the world is run by like 8 different organizations and it's all business? Okay, we've got another question from Japan, and I definitely don't know how to pronounce this, but I'll try to get it right. Either Yui or maybe Wee from Kyoto, Japan, asking.
I'm glad you're taking the.
I'll take the heat. If I pronounce that incorrectly, let me know. How can IAM solutions be designed to be more user friendly without compromising on security features?
I mean, that's the age-old question. How can solutions be designed to be more user friendly? I say it's the age-old question because it's always been like considered a balance between usability and security. Meaning, it's like if you had a slider, if you make it more secure, it's going to be less user-friendly. If you make it more user-friendly, it's going to be less secure. The tagline for everything passwordless is like, actually, it's one of those few scenarios where when you make it more user-friendly, you get rid of passwords, you actually make it more secure, which I do think is true. But I think, the spirit of the question is like, okay, if I'm designing an IAM system, how do I make sure that I get both things? I think it's involvement of the user. It kind of goes back to the discussion we were having about workshops. What's one way to ensure that your IAM deployment will fail is like, don't include people that it's going to affect.
Yeah.
If you don't include them, it's almost guaranteed to fail. But if you do include them, you increase your likelihood of success. They'll also give you the feedback of like, what do they not understand? Because a lot of times user friendliness just comes down to making it more understandable. If you kind of get inside the head of, whoever your customer or user is, and you design around that, you can increase the user friendliness without even affecting security. You may also find that like there's no way we can remember 16 character passwords. Like that's not going to work. And so you might have to, and I'm just using, that's a really bad example, but just using that as an area where you might say, okay, well, actually involving the users made me rethink this password policy. But if you think about it, like, yeah, when you give people 16 character passwords, they're going to find ways around, they're going to write down the password, or they're going to do whatever they have to do to not make it so that they have to go through a reset password every time.
Yeah, just add a number, increment the number to the end, and that's how we get it.
Include those folks in your process and really listen to them.
I'm going to add a question to this as well, because I think this next one is kind of in the same vein. It's from Beatrice in Rome. How can organizations ensure that their IAM solutions are inclusive and accessible to all users, regardless of their technical skill level? So I think you kind of touched there. And the previous question around, do people understand what they're doing? Like, what's the training? What's the, how do we bring people up to speed? But thoughts on inclusivity and accessibility and how that aligns with technical capability.
Yeah, it's not only technical capability, but you also have to think about disabilities. Like some folks have, different types of issues, and there are browsers made for different disabilities that, if if you're blind, for example, that they can read for you, or, if you just make assumptions that everybody fits a certain mold, everybody has the ability to see, or everybody has the ability to hear, or they're all using a keyboard to enter. Like, you need to challenge those assumptions. And I think this becomes more and more true as you're providing services to citizens. So I think it's so easy to kind of like fall into the mindset of like, oh, I've been working with, B to E kind of scenarios with, certain size employee population, it's a captive audience, or they're just in the US and everybody's going to kind of have the same understanding and all that. But when you're talking about like, the citizens, or you're talking about large global outreach, or you're talking about B2C, you have to take all these things into account even more and challenge yourself on those most basic assumptions that people have these capabilities. I think from a technical skill level, again, I think it's technical skills can be a lot of things, but I think it also can map back to, age and experience, especially like the older population within our world. They did not grow up with technology in their hands from a very early age. I kind of feel like the technical skills of teenagers is probably a lot better than, technical skills of senior citizens.
We haven't talked about your dad in a while. Like, how would you?
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, I figured. How would you explain a passkey to your dad?
I wouldn't. I would not even try. I will tell you that he's found email within the last couple of years, and it's like he's bonkers over email. He like emails me all the time, and I'm like, and then he gets mad if I don't email him right back. I'm like, Dad, it's not a
real-time messaging platform, right?
Yeah, we were out the other night and sat down with some folks who we didn't know, they're just strangers, and the guy next to me, the guy who like shared their table with us, he was very excited. He took a picture of he and his wife and posted it to Facebook. He got 32 likes on it in like a half hour, and he like showed me. I was like, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I've already been through, I was on Facebook for a decade and then closed my account like 5-6 years ago. And like, you could tell he just got Facebook, and he's like excited that so many people liked his picture with his wife, which I was happy for him, because he's kind of like almost in that infancy level of dealing with Facebook. Mm-hmm. He hasn't like felt the hatred for it yet.
Embrace the joy that happens.
Embrace the joy.
All right. This is our last one, and I think this is one near and dear to your heart. So from Rachel in Seattle, Washington, with the proliferation of microservices and containerized environments, how can organizations effectively manage and secure machine identities at scale? You're all about machine identities recently, so let's have at it.
Well, yeah. Well, we had David Motti on, and I think that was a fantastic episode. So if you want to really dive in to that topic, I would go back and listen to that episode. But, kind of pulling Rachel's question apart here, I think, there's two different types of machine identities, of those that are static and those that are created and destroyed, perhaps within seconds. But I think what we're trying to get to is like zero standing privileges. So I think even those machines that are created and destroyed, the idea is that, okay, you're not creating an account that should be around and like, I'm going to create the account, I'm just going to let it sit there until I need it again, and then we have to just check it out and do what I have to do. But the idea is already pre-thought in terms of what access that account needs to have to do the thing that this application or service wants to do. And so those rules of the road should be set. They should be built into the microservices that create and destroy that account. Like, you can only get an account that has this much. And then business rules may be that, all right, if it's not destroyed within a certain amount of time, then it's destroyed. Those, as information security professionals, we need to talk with the developers of these microservices to, agree on the rules of the road so that they understand, we can stay within our controls. For these accounts that always have to exist and maybe have standing privileges. We just have to have controls around them. We need to understand what they're being used for. And that way we can build our logging around, knowing that. We can build our lifecycle processes around, making sure that account is created properly and reviewed periodically and destroyed. So I kind of feel like the rules of the road are kind of the same, in terms of you've got to understand what these accounts are intended to do. Use least privilege in terms of, either creating them or allowing them to be created. And then in the long run, you have to monitor what's being done with them.
I think, I don't know if I have anything better to add to that other than listen to Jim's answer and then go back and listen to, I think it was episode 239. It was the first one that we did at the Authenticate kind of slew of episodes that we threw out there. So, that's where I guess I'll leave it there for that one. Why don't we go ahead and start to wrap things up? And I was thinking about how we want to end on a lighter note today. And I'm drawing on my experience of yesterday, which was a Saturday, and heading up into the Blue Ridge Mountains. Very faint cell phone service where we were in the middle of nowhere, basically, at a friend's kind of barbecue, hangout, campfire, something or other, whatever you want to call it. And, a bunch of people just hanging around, playing games and eating food and just talking and chatting and sitting enjoying the great weather that it was. What is your favorite backyard barbecue party game?
I've got one answer in 3 different parts.
Okay, of course.
My OG original, I think OG stands for original gangster, right?
Yes. Straight from the hood.
Yeah,
that's Jimmy Mack.
Straight from the hood. Jimmy Mack in the hood. Well, my favorite lawn game or barbecue game was Jarts. Remember Jarts?
I definitely remember that. That didn't last very long. Didn't they ban that?
Well, imagine if one of those Jarts landed on your forehead. You'd be DOA, man.
Yeah, I remember
they were heavy.
I was probably like 6 or 7, I think, and we had a set. And that was the first thing you thought. I was like, all right, how much damage can we do with this thing?
That was a great game, though, too. Like, even if you just played it by the rules, like, it'd be hard not to have fun with Jarts.
So for people who aren't familiar with Jarts, explain what it is.
So they were like very large darts, and the ends were, the points were heavily weighted. So you could basically swing them on the side of your body and like launch them maybe 100 feet or 50 feet to a target, and they would always land heavy side, like dart point into the ground, and they would land and they would stick. So that was the game. It was essentially like a bullseye. You'd set up some kind of target on 2 ends, and you'd have some scoring system, which I think worked like, horseshoes, which was my second answer. But it was with these darts.
Yeah.
And I think they somehow were banned. They disappeared.
Yeah. I think real quickly, too, because I think it was like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have people throwing lawn darts basically into the air and having them come down and spiking people. And it wasn't even a pointed tip, right? It was just weighted. But if anything falls from a high enough distance, it's going to do some damage. And
It was heavy. And it wasn't pointed like a sharp point,
right.
But even that dull point, I think, would have cracked through a skull.
Yeah, definitely not safe.
Yeah, not safe. Anyway, my second one is horseshoes. And my third one is cornhole, which, I mean, everybody plays cornhole now. And they're all like tossing things.
Yeah.
Which even after you've had a few microbrews, you're still able to throw things.
Yeah, maybe not well or accurately, but yeah. I like cornhole. I have a couple. So cornhole, we definitely did that yesterday. We did the other thing that I like to do, and this is something my wife's family introduced, is bocce. So super easy. People can kind of all ages and skill ranges can play. And we have like a Christmas tradition when we can make it out there to have a Christmas bocce game in the backyard. And usually it's in Chicago, which means it's like, less than 0 degrees, freezing, and no one is dressed for the occasion typically. And we're out freezing in someone's backyard in the dark, trying to play bocce. And a lot of good memories kind of around that. So I think that's probably my favorite one. But yesterday, Jim, I did something that I am proud/saddened to tell you, that I won a particular game. I'll give you one guess, but I'm sure you won't guess it. What is the game you think we played?
Shooting arrows.
Proud.
At a...
Okay.
How about it?
No.
Is that it?
I'll tell you it was food related.
Oh, hot dog eating contest?
No, I definitely wouldn't win that, although I look like I would. We did a donut eating contest. Now, I have never done this before, but it was not like consume as many donuts as you can. It was not. That was not the contest. So what we did is we took donut rings, basically, and ran a string through them. And then who could eat the donut fastest off of the string without using their hands? And the donut could not hit the ground. So there's some strategy there, right? Where you've got a string running through the donut hole, and people are trying to eat it. And the string is moving because everybody is trying to eat it at the same time. And I am proud/sad to report to you that I won.
You won?
I was not the fastest, but I was the most strategic. I went slow, methodical. And people who were very close to the end, they were about to win, and then the donut fell on the ground. So it was very hairy there at the last few seconds as I kind of took the last big bite. I had to do the lean back and try and make sure that nothing fell. But yeah, my proudest.
How many cheat?
It was just one donut. That was it. Just one donut. It was a glazed donut.
One.
They had vanilla frosting on it, but that was it. There was like 6 of us in a row, and we were all trying to, eat the donut on the string without letting it hit the ground.
Well, congratulations. I'm proud of you.
Send help. I don't know.
This is my proudest moment. This is my proudest moment of you, Jeff.
This is a real highlight.
Hearing a secondhand story about your donut eating contest.
Yeah. And I love donuts. You don't need to put a string through it and put me in a contest. I will have a donut any time of day. But yeah, I don't know if I should be proud or sad of it. I think my wife was both as well.
Honorable mention to the Dizzy Bat race.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, Dizzy. We did like the ping the tail on the donkey type thing. So it was someone's birthday party. So yeah, we did that as well. And
oh, nice.
Yeah.
Sounds like you had a great time.
It was a good time. We're out. I mean, out in the literally the middle of like nowhere. Probably Blue Ridge Mountains for sure. Barely any cell signal. And it was fun. It was good times, kind of relaxing and stuff like that. So but now I'm off to the airport for another week filled of travel and identity hijinks. And then I'll be back later. So
say hi to the people at the Delta Club for me.
Yeah, I definitely will. All right, let's go ahead and wrap it up for this week. Listen to the show, subscribe, share with your friends. That's how we motivates us to keep going. We'd probably be doing it if no one was listening, but we've definitely seen a large growth in listenership, and definitely thank everyone out there for sharing the word. We're on the web.
And Jeff, can I throw one thing in there?
Absolutely.
If people like the show, even if they don't get the show from YouTube, if you could go out next time you're on YouTube, look us up and subscribe. That way we can start to see that subscriber number grow.
Mm-hmm. That would be fantastic. Great. Yeah. So go to the website, idacpodcast.com. In the upper right, there'll be a link to the YouTube channel. Go over there, start subscribing. I only do 3 uploads a day, so we're not spamming people's YouTube feeds. And eventually it'll catch up with where we're at in real time. And then you'll expect to see podcasts there as well, just like we do all the time. We're on Twitter, X, whatever, at IDAC Podcast, Mastodon at IDAC Podcast at infosec.exchange. And of course, Jim and I, you're on LinkedIn. We also have the LinkedIn page that I started recently, starting to tag that in all the announcements for the show and stuff like that to try and make it easy for people. I'm not sure how we'll kind of leverage it yet, but I figured, after 200 and some episodes,
it just posts all the same things that you and I post.
Yeah, exactly. So definitely reach out. Thanks to the listeners who sent in their questions. If we didn't get to them this time, we save them up every so often and we kind of address them as much as we can and when we can. But feel free to send those in. And thanks everybody for listening. And we'll talk with everybody in the next one.
You've been listening to Identity at the Center. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit the website at identityatthecenter.com and find us on Twitter at IDAC Podcast. See you next time on Identity at the center.